Hey everyone, before this video starts, I would like to give a massive shout out to some of the people that helped make this video possible in the first place. The first is Tampa Never Sleeps and TONG. Tampa Never Sleeps' YouTube channel is where a lot of the footage in this video is from, and I can't thank TONG, who is the founder, enough for giving me permission to use these YouTube videos as footage in this video. I really appreciate it. So go check out their YouTube channel, follow them on Twitter, and join some of their brackets. They run a ton of different online tournaments for a ton of different games. It's always a good time, so many different top players, so go check them out. Second, I want to thank Bluelinkys, who helped me out a ton on one of the sections of this video focused on DNF Duel. Thank you so much. Really, I can't overstate how much I appreciate it. He did not give me any social media or anything to plug, so in his stead, I'm just gonna go play DNF Duel. Anyway, thank you again to Tampa Never Sleeps and Bluelinkys, and let's get into it. The term glass cannon refers to a character who trades extremely strong offensive firepower for weak defense. There are probably hundreds of examples of these kinds of characters present across all manner of different types of games, including, of course, fighting games. However, the point of this video isn't just to examine this specific type of character. It started off that way, but as I did more thinking and research, I began to realize that there are actually quite a few different ways that developers have used defense as a balance mechanic. And the funny thing is, it almost never goes well. Thus, today I want to talk about the most extreme examples of this type of design that I've always found very flawed but also quite interesting, which is characters whose primary strengths are balanced by some form of low vitality. Low health isn't always tied to a character's playstyle. Sometimes it correlates to the lore, like with Ukyo and Samsho, and sometimes the reason is just arbitrary, like, I don't know, because they're a girl. Of course, when this does happen and a character's low health is used to balance out their strengths, the results can be quite hilarious. Let's get into it. This first character is likely one of the first examples you might think of a glass cannon, but before I get to him, I want to establish some context as to what may be the greatest introduction to any fighting game character. So, let's imagine you're in an arcade in 1994 playing Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. It's like the 4th or 5th version of Street Fighter 2. It's a little faster and there's some new moves, but ultimately it's not much different from what you've been playing since 1991. You make it through the arcade mode and finally get to Bison. Things are pretty normal right now. And then this happens. Now, I don't know about any of you, and I really can't say for sure as I grew up way after Super Turbo's release in a time when arcades were starting to die off, but if I were in this situation where my Street Fighter arcade run was suddenly interrupted by an evil-looking version of Ryu who kills the final boss and then starts kicking my ass with that terrifying music in the background, I'd have walked out of that arcade with my pants thoroughly soiled. This is Akuma, and he made his debut as a secret boss, only challenging the most proficient players who dared to grab his attention. He was also playable as a secret character, and believe it or not, this version of Akuma is a nerfed version of the boss who is still overpowered enough to be banned from the majority of Super Turbo tournaments to this day. Even in HD Remix, which was a remade version of Super Turbo that attempted to balance Akuma, he was still banned after a player called Damdai went on a streak of dominance to prove that ST Akuma was still broken, even with nerfs. This version of Akuma is downright infamous, but would also establish Akuma's terrifying legacy as a character who is rarely any less than one of the most powerful characters in the many Street Fighter games he's appeared in. As mentioned earlier, Akuma's design takes heavy inspiration from Ryu and Ken. In many ways, the idea of Akuma is to take the iconic tools Ryu and Ken are known for and tweak them to be much more fitting for just wreaking havoc. He takes the standard Shoto toolset, a fireball, an uppercut, and a tatsu, all while possessing similar normals to Ryu and Ken, and combines that with many of his own unique tools. Unlike Ryu and Ken, Akuma is capable of throwing his fireball in the air, giving him very strong air approaches. This particular move was part of why he's so ridiculous in Super Turbo, as the air fireball was downright oppressive in that game and shut down most members of the cast. But even in future, less insane incarnations of the character, his air fireball still tends to be very strong. Notably, in some of the older SF games, he could do this from a neutral or even backward jump, which made the air fireball very hard to deal with as it created large amounts of space between Akuma and the opponent. Newer games have made it so that he can only throw fireballs from a forward jump, a welcomed change. He's also got a stronger but slightly slower to start up variant of his grounded fireball, which is known as the red fireball. In order to compensate for the slower startup, it's multi-hitting and knocks down on hit, unlike his regular fireball. Akuma possesses Demon Raid, also known as Demon Flip, a command jump with multiple follow-ups. A palm, a low-hitting slide, a dive kick, and a command grab, among other things, allows Akuma to run a strong mix-up game, and it's at the forefront of his strength as a character in some games. His teleport is one of his coolest moves and a huge asset for his defense as it's invincible and travels quite far. Very useful as a way of escaping sticky situations, something that Akuma certainly appreciates. One of Akuma's most common yet subtle traits is good walk speed. Across most games he tends to have very fast forward walk speed. He's great at schmoving in a way that's non-committal and establishes good control of a match's pace. And then of course, there's the Raging Demon. While the utility of this command grab can vary greatly based on the game, one thing's for certain is that regardless of if it's good or bad, it's always stylish as hell and disrespectful to land. In some games, Akuma can turn it into a very viable mix-up option through the use of a technique called Kara cancels. This allows you to cancel the first few frames of one move's startup into another. Akuma's Kara Demon tends to use his overhead, creating a mix-up between overhead or command throw that can be quite terrifying. With the ability to play a strong fireball game, his great pokes, his fantastic movement, and his extra burst options like Demon Flip which can help him remain unpredictable, Akuma's offense is peerless, and even when he's not the absolute best in the game, he still ends up being a strong and viable pick. Third Strike always stood out to me as one of Akuma's more balanced incarnations, as there are a handful of characters considered better than him despite his high tier placing. Here, Akuma's mix-ups, damage, and versatility are balanced out by a lack of EX moves and his 3 selectable supers all having the same length bar, which makes his selection of supers a little less flexible than others. Of course, that becomes a little more understandable when you remember that in Second Impact, the predecessor to Third Strike where Akuma made his Street Fighter III debut, he was completely busted because of his absurdly fast dive kick which comes down faster than a goddamn rainstorm. This move was nerfed heavily in Third Strike, giving us a more reasonable character. In SF4, Akuma was characterized by his mix-ups, with Demon Flip allowing him to run a vortex of ambiguous cross-ups, high-low, and throws. Anytime Akuma jumped at you, you were in danger of getting opened up, and he controlled the ground well with his buttons and fireball. While how strong he was changed throughout the life of SF4 with the different updates and patches, he remained a consistently strong pick. SF5 Akuma kept many of the same strengths he had in previous Street Fighters, with good footsie buttons, good ground control, and his large depth of air options. Those came packed with a very good use of SF5's V system thanks to his powerful V trigger and V skill. His V skill is an armored stance with an anti-air and a forward palm strike follow-up, while his V trigger enhances his fireballs, making his pressure even stronger and giving him great damage potential thanks to his enhanced DP. These helped Tokido to win EVO 2017 and get second at Capcom Cup 2017 and EVO 2018 during the peak of Akuma's dominance. All of his power across these many different games comes at the cost of a consistent weakness. Be it lower health or a bad defense modifier, Akuma's unparalleled power is paid for in blood. Alpha 2, Third Strike, SF4, and 5, in all of these games, Akuma is often on the lowest end of health or defense. This is a problem that's present even in many of his crossover appearances, such as Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and 3 and Capcom vs. SNK 2. In some of these games, he didn't even end up being very good, so the whole low health to compensate for a laundry list of advantages thing doesn't really work out. Anyway, Akuma is often in danger of getting crushed in mere seconds, so extreme caution is advised. This design has persisted even in his most recent incarnation in Street Fighter VI, where he manages to translate into that game's new systems very, very well with some of his returning moves, as well as some new tricks and tools. Akuma's set of normals is downright privileged. He has basically every kind of button you need. 4-frame jabs with good range that lead to easy knockdowns after a confirm? Check. A plus on block 6-frame medium that's a little stubby but ultimately a great pressure tool and even comes with a target combo extension? Check. An extremely good heavy punch with long range and a large hit confirm window? Check. And of course, the trademark of Street Fighter VI neutral, low forward drive rush. Some of these buttons may seem like they don't have great range, but Akuma's very fast walk speed allows him to weave in and out of the ranges where these normals are most effective very easily. His most unique normal is his standing heavy kick, a large, 2-hitting button that's plus on block and moves Akuma forward. However, while it is a strong button, the second hit does not hit crouching opponents. In the case that it whiffs, Akuma is left very, very punishable, so be careful. He also has a lot of very good command normals. Forward medium kick and forward heavy punch act as longer ranged pokes, with the latter having a very easily hit confirmable target combo that knocks down. Back heavy kick is a great anti-air with large vertical range, and of course he has an overhead, which is plus enough on hit for combos after drive rush or counter hit and punish counter. Akuma's specials are the usual Shoto fare, but introduce a high level of utility. His fireball is great as a projectile, with the heavy version sporting unbelievable travel speed. While previous games gave Akuma an alternative red fireball with slow startup but higher damage, SF6 takes this idea in a bit of a different direction. Now Akuma can charge his fireball, with 2 higher levels that take a bit to charge, but provide higher damage and the multi-hitting properties of a red fireball. His DP is pretty standard as his main anti-air and reversal, although it's worth noting that his EX DP does do above average damage. The usual damage range for EX reversals is around 1400 to 1600 damage, but Akuma's does 1700, which was actually lowered from 1900 in a patch, which is not a bad return for such a large risk. His Tatsu is a great combo ender, with the light version comboing into sweep, a simple and classic conversion that opens up safe jumps and extremely good okizeme, or wake up pressure. The medium version has remarkable corner carry, and the heavy version is his highest damage ender in many of his routes. Akuma's teleport is no longer invincible in 6, but now has a command grab attached to it, which can be useful if the opponent isn't ready for it. Demon Flip has been retooled, losing the palm and command grab in favor of Demon Swoop, which allows him to land for an easy strike throw mix that can punish parrying very well, and the extremely belligerent Demon Chop that's plus on block. Good luck dealing with this as a character that doesn't have a DP. He now has a new special known as Adamant Flame, which is simultaneously a great combo starter, combo extender, and combo ender, giving him access to incredible damage output. This smorgasbord of different ways to inflict pain is quite extreme, but that's to balance out his health. 9,000, the lowest in the game, forcing him on a razor's edge, constantly facing complete and utter annihilation. Whenever Akuma's not in control, he's in peril, especially given the very volatile nature of SF6. But there is one slight thing that makes it a little better than before. In previous games, Akuma not only had low health but also low stun, meaning every hit was doubly damning for him. In SF6, stun is now tied to being wall splatted by a drive impact while in burnout, and it works the same for everyone, including Akuma, so taking hits is a little less punishing than before. Plus, being real, damage in this game is so high that sometimes the fact that he's got 1k less health than the majority of the roster isn't even noticeable to me. Look, when Bison is hitting you with a fully optimized bomb combo for 7k, everyone looks like they have low health. It's worth noting that Akuma also has good defensive options, with his EX DP and his 3 supers all acting as competent reversals. Akuma in 6 has been extremely successful, with numerous players picking him up full time or as a secondary to great effect. He's won major tournaments like CEO 2024 and the Singapore CPT Super Premier thanks to the efforts of Punk and Shuto respectively, and despite some nerfs, he continues to be a menace in the meta. Really, Akuma is just all about hurting people. Getting killed in 2 touches sucks. Now, 2-touching someone yourself? That's what we like. Sometimes, making a strong character isn't always about firepower. After all, how can you defeat a character that you can't even catch? The Pixie archetype is described by Infill's fighting game glossary as a character with fast movement and strong mix-up potential, but low damage and poor survivability to compensate. Essentially, live fast, die hard, hit like a pillow. No one embodies this kind of design better than Chipp Zanuff of Guilty Gear fame. The Ninja President, which is an occupation so badass sounding that I can't even really make a joke about it, is a mainstay in the series, having debuted in the original Guilty Gear game, with a kit and game plan that's remained surprisingly consistent over 2+ decades. Overwhelming super speed assault is the descriptor used for him in Guilty Gear Strive's character select, and yeah, that certainly tracks. Even in the series' very not great origins, the character's modus operandi as an absolute speed machine is clear. Conversely, he's extremely good in this game with very easy infinites and a ton of strong tools. There's a great video by Mebiador that goes into more detail on this particular version of the character that I recommend, which is good because I might go blind if I have to look at this game for an extended period of time again. I'll link it in the description. Anyway, even as the series becomes more refined with future installments, things don't change much for Chipp. He's blatantly the fastest character in the games he's in, and the depth and effectiveness of all the different ways he can traverse the screen makes him incredibly hard to pin down. His dash and running speed are both incredibly fast, giving him excellent ground movement. This fast running speed results in far-reaching dash jumps that can cover a large area with little efforts, and he has fast buttons to boot, so he's able to get in and start his pressure very quickly. In the air, he's no slouch. Chipp can air dash, which isn't really special as that's basically a universal feature in GG, but he also possesses 2 mid-air jumps, 3 in total, allowing him to constantly remain unpredictable with his air movement. His bevy of strong jump-ins certainly helps too, with his JS and JH being wonderful for mix-ups thanks to their cross-up potential. Chipp can approach very efficiently with his speedy movement, but he's also just as good at running away, and being hard to catch is part of what makes him so difficult to fight. Beyond the extreme speed of his many different movement options, much of Chipp's kit is dedicated to cracking the opponent's defense open and running a strong and unrelenting offense. Not too similar to Akuma with Street Fighter, Chipp is meant to fit into Guilty Gear's aggressive pace very well and does so with a ton of different mix-up, mobility, and approach tools. His 6K is an overhead that hops over lows and can be comboed off of with Roman Cancel, which allows you to cancel the animation of an attack at the cost of some meter. He has Alpha Blade, a fairly fast teleporting slash with great range that serves as a way to quickly escape corners or otherwise unfavorable positions. Used as an offensive tool, it can be pretty effective since the teleport makes it hard to check and it also crosses up, although the opponent can check it if they're ready. It's also usable in the air. In certain games, it can be used as a way to avoid attacks that can't hit Chipp in the air since he's considered airborne even during the grounded version, which notably allows him to crush throws with it. Gamma Blade is a projectile that stuns the opponent on hit, allowing for a full combo. It has very good range and the stun lasts for a pretty long time. How Chipp uses it can vary from game to game as the startup and properties are slightly different, particularly in Strive as it doesn't stun on hit in this game, but it's been a strong Oki and pressure tool for him in most appearances. Speaking of projectiles, Chipp can also throw a shuriken from the air. He has 2 versions, a slow one that halts his momentum, and a fast one that lets him attack immediately after throwing it. The 2 appear in an alternating order, so after throwing a slow shuriken, he'll always throw a fast one. Important to remember which one you're on because they have vastly different uses. The fast one is a great way to bolster his approach with his air normals, while the slow one is more suited to defensive purposes. I've talked about a few moves where Chipp teleports, but he also just straight up has a dedicated teleport special. He can appear from the ground or the air in different positions, and if you're not ready, he can very easily use it to escape your offense or mix your shit. In Plus R, Chipp can use a technique called FRC, Force Roman Cancel, in conjunction with the teleport to cancel the animation early and set up extremely strong, hard to see mix-ups with the air version. Similar mix exists in Exert thanks to the yellow Roman Cancel mechanic. Offensively, Chipp has a Rekka and a command grab. Strive Chipp's Rekka is one of his primary tools for pressure. It has a low and overhead follow-up, and with the generous window that you can delay either, you can force your opponent into some nasty high-low situations, with Roman cancels allowing for conversions on hit. Chipp's command grab is fairly slow, but it does do a lot of damage, so it's a welcomed mix-up option. One of his coolest attributes is his ability to cling onto walls, during which he can perform various actions depending on the game. Plus R Chipp's wall dive is insanely fast, and he can cancel it into his air buttons, his air dash, and even some of his air OK specials like the shuriken. Combined with how low to the wall he can cling onto, it's a disgusting Okizeme tool, setting up constant unreactable mix-ups if he can get a knockdown near the corner. Strive's recent updates have added new specials for many of the base roster characters, and the addition to Chipp's moveset is the tightrope. This move is hilarious. Upon setting it up, he can hang onto it and perform his ground normals, even while hanging upside down, or he can drop off of it. It's an excellent tool for bolstering his already plentiful bag of mix. Oh yeah, and some games also let him turn invisible. How can you fight that which you cannot see? As is plain to see, Chipp is all about getting in and staying in, be it pressure with frame traps via his Rekka, strike throw, or constant high-low and left-rights. Chipp is a smothering force of unrelenting offense. When Chipp is in control, he's overwhelming, and his different ways of traversing the screen allows him to navigate neutral in many ways, or stall to preserve life leads and frustrate opponents into making mistakes. This is a consistent strength across basically all of his appearances, but it comes at the cost of a weakness that he's also never without. Appropriate that his name is Chipp, because he has the durability of one, consistently being one of the frailest characters. That meme about Potemkin and Chipp having a 10-10 matchup because Chipp's huge amount of mobility advantages is offset by the fact that Potemkin can kill him by just breathing a little too hard on him is hilarious, but also indicative in a way of how quickly things can go to shit for Chipp. Incidentally, he has a high Guts rating, Guts being a defensive modifier that decreases the damage a character takes as their health gets lower, so it's slightly less problematic as he gets lower on health, but that doesn't wipe the issue entirely. Chipp's health being so low is his biggest bane in most games, but it's worth mentioning that he has good defensive tools to compensate, notably Beta Blade, which is a fast, invincible DP that can get him out of a pinch, as well as universal mechanics like Burst to escape combos. If these get baited though... Also, he has fast buttons for Abare and lots of ways to slip out of the corner, like his teleports and Alpha Blade. In addition to his poor defense, Chipp tends to do lower than average damage. It's not exactly death by 1,000 cuts, but his mix-ups, while incredibly hard to deal with, don't usually lead to extremely high damage, something that especially stands out considering that most characters will outdamage him by default because of his frailty. Despite these issues, Chipp is a menace and has been strong across numerous appearances. We have Summit in Exerd winning EVO Japan 2019 and SEAM Singapore 2019 with Chipp, or strong placings from Bean and Marvello in Strive. Chipp is volatile, but the results are there from players skilled and dedicated enough to persist through the chaos. I mean, look, even the fucking former president of the United States is a Chipp player. Presidents gotta stick together, I guess. Alright, so why the hell has it taken me so long to talk about Undernight Inbirth? Seriously. That said, my original choice of character from this series was Seth. Similar to Chipp, he's fast and frail with some added projectile set play to spice things up. But that would be kinda boring, and in my opinion, there's another character in the roster that embodies the topic of this video in a more unique way. Thus, let's talk about Carmine. This red edgy boy's been a standout in the meta of the newest Uni game, Uni 2, for basically a year now, and boy am I excited to talk about him. Carm is one of the most unique characters in the roster, something that might not be evident at first glance. What we have here is a character who specializes in surrounding you with shit and filling the screen with danger. So much danger that it's kinda excessive. Carmine is a character with dominant neutral and smothering set play, and his game is all about taking you out before he does himself in. More on that later. Carm has big, bully-style buttons with large reach that allows him to poke from very long ranges. 5B, 5C, 6C, and 3C are all huge, and his air buttons are quite large as well. This fantastic reach allows Carm to pressure at very far distances, easily whiff-punishing Abare attempts. He's rarely ever pressuring you with just buttons alone though, so you don't usually want to try to jab out of Carmine sequences. Among his largest buttons, JC and 6C can both be increased, a French bred mechanic present in Melty and Uni that allows you to hold a button to power up its properties. By charging up these two buttons, their range increases and 6C also hits as overhead, making it a great mix-up tool. His 5B has a second hit that gives it even more reach. The amount of times I've tried to poke Carm at a mid-range only to be incidentally hit by 5BB alone makes me hate this normal. You can add in a third hit of B for a throw follow-up. Carm's 6B is unique, acting as a projectile, a fast one considering there's no motion attached to it, and it can also be increased, causing it to fly upward at an angle that you can adjust by holding a direction, giving him a good long-ranged anti-air. In the air, 6B fires a projectile downward. Carm has 4 main special moves: Spin, Pulverize, Thrust, and Launch. As you can probably deduce from the juvenile naming, they're all fairly simple. Spin 236X is a blade that spins for a brief moment before traveling backward and disappearing. It's typically used as a combo extender and a pressure tool since it hits multiple times and it's plus a billion on block. You can also use this special in the air. Pulverize 623X is a move that hits low, which is evil because that does not look like a low. It can occasionally be used to catch people off guard if they're trying to look out for an overhead, but be careful as it can be quite unsafe on block based on when it hits during the active frames and the spacing. In Uni, the C versions of specials cost 100 meter but have improved properties. For 623C, it's invincible, essentially acting as his reversal. Thrust is 214X and it has Carmine create 2 blood spikes from the ground, which hits from over half a screen away. 214C has Carm jump into the air, which can be used to call out throws. It's also plus on block. Finally, Launch is 22X and it causes a blood spike to pop from the ground. This also hits low, which can be used to catch people who are walking back. The way I described these moves may have made them sound rather unimpressive, but that's because they really can't be evaluated on their own, since part of what makes them so strong isn't just their own merits, but how they play into Carmine's main gimmick. You may have noticed those purple puddles that pop up sometimes. These are dissolves, and they are by far the scariest thing about this character. Here's the basic gist. 236X, increase 214A and B, 6B, JB, and 22X will all create a puddle on the ground. He can move this puddle using his force function, B plus C, and this move also creates puddles itself. Carmine's moves can be used to manipulate these dissolves, and each has a unique behavior. If 236X is used while a dissolve is on the ground, that dissolve will turn into a blade that travels forward along the ground. If 22X is used while a dissolve is present, a second spike will emerge from that dissolve. 623X will cause any dissolve on screen to detonate, massively increasing the range and safety. The most unique of these moves is the increased version of 214X. When charged up, 214A and 214B create dissolves that cannot be detonated by any other special. This one will not activate until you let go of the button used to send it out. It has long startup, but massive potential as a tool for baiting defensive options or creating plus frames, since you can control when it detonates. It's best set up using 22C, which traps the opponent in a crystal for a lengthy period, giving you ample time to set down a dissolve with 214A and 214B at the same time. The dissolves grant Carmine access to extremely good control of the stage, since he can set them wherever he wants. They're integral for his pressure, giving him some of the longest block strings in the game, and keep in mind that while he's forcing you to block, he's doing chip damage, and he's also trying to open you up with fuzzies, empty jump lows, increased 6C, and these all easily convert into combos that end in situations that allow him to create even more puddles and loop the situation. In a single hit, Carmine can snowball you into a horrible position that forces you to guess for your life. Of course, you can try to shield through these block strings, but if he reads this and grabs you, then you take extra damage, along with some other punishments. You put that together with high damage potential and you have one of, if not the scariest character to deal with when he's on offense. However, this power does not come without a cost. It's not his health total overall or any defensive modifiers. Actually, in terms of health, he's tied for the third highest in the game. No, Carmine pays a different price. Pay attention to his health bar. Yeah, you saw that right. For every dissolve Carmine creates, he sacrifices his health. Every dissolve costs 300 health, and you can't choose to not create any either. Carmine requires extreme caution to play, and he's a difficult character not just because of execution with things like negative edging, but because of the heavy need for good decision making in regards to health. It's your most important resource, and if you spend a ton to get in or pressure or combo, you may find that by the time you've done any substantial damage, you may have only just broken even in terms of life, especially if you're already at a life deficit. As harsh as playing Carmine can be in terms of testing your health management, the game does provide you with two ways to slightly offset this problem. Carmine can actually recover his health. His regular grab, the grab from 5BBB, and 214B plus C, which is an invincible command grab that costs meter, all give Carmine some of his health back, incentivizing you to take advantage of a strike throw game. The second benefit comes from proper usage of that weird bar at the bottom of the screen. This is Uni's defining mechanic, the grid system. Essentially, during the course of a match, you and your opponent are in a perpetual game of tug of war with this meter. Both players can gain or spend blocks of grid by performing certain actions. After a set amount of time, a cycle will be completed and the player with more blocks of grid will be granted Vorpal State, during which numerous benefits are given. On top of the universal stuff that everyone on the cast gets, there's also character-specific buffs given in Vorpal. For Carmine, it will reduce the amount of life he spends on his dissolves by half and decrease the startup of his force function, giving his dissolves better maneuverability. He's liable to losing the cycle very easily since his long block strings can be shielded, which will give the opponent more grid than him, so learning how to bait shields with throws is important. He's a highly volatile character, but also one capable of playing to the game's systems extremely well, and with strong results from players like Notes, the best Japanese Carmine, or Defiant, arguably the winningest NA Uni player who's extremely proficient with much of the roster, Carmine included, it's hard to deny how strong he is, even in spite of his health issues and other flaws like his fairly sluggish frame data. I can fucking vouch for that. As an aside, I'd like to absentmindedly point out that Uni 2 is awesome and you should try it. It's a good game. Marvel 3 health distribution is honestly pretty tight. The majority of their choices for the cast's health are pretty sensible, in terms of gameplay anyway. In terms of characters, I'd really need someone more knowledgeable than me to explain why Phoenix Wright and Frank West have more health than a Sentinel. Speaking of Phoenix, Phoenix and Phoenix Wright, confusing as hell. For clarity, the segment of the video is focused on the Marvel character, not the Capcom character. So, Bird Lady. For this discussion, I'd actually like to start by introducing her lack of defense first. Phoenix has the absolute lowest HP total in the entire roster. For reference, the second lowest health in this game is 750,000, belonging to Strider and Akuma. If you're not familiar with this game, I'll give you a second to guess what Phoenix's health is. Come up with anything yet? If your guess was, I don't know, 500,000, then congrats, you're wrong. Phoenix has 375,000 health, literally half of what Akuma and Strider have to work with, and this is in a game where the highest health characters have over 1 million HP and still get TOD'd. Needless to say, Phoenix has the durability of a wet sheet of off-brand paper towel. She dies if you look at her funny, or if you sneeze too hard in her general direction. Most characters can kill her without needing to spend any resources at all. Caught in almost any situation, Phoenix explodes and does so in the literal blink of an eye. Her fragility is almost comical. In spite of her saltine cracker-esque durability, she still tends to be ranked as one of the better characters in the game, and teams using her have seen major tournament success thanks to players like Filipino Champ, the EVO 2012 champion, and Ryan LV, the winner of 2017's EVO and Maximilian's UMBC 3 Invitational from a few years back. So clearly, there's more merit to this character than I'd alluded to. Let's get into it. Phoenix is a highly mobile character first and foremost. Equipped with a flight special and an 8-way air dash, she's adept at traveling the screen in a manner that's quick and allows her to stay out of harm's way. On the offensive, well, obviously she isn't equipped to any kind of close-range situation, so she's mostly about staying back and staying safe with her mobility options and her solid fireball that can make for a suitably strong keep-away tool. Her mix-up potential is also really good thanks to the TK Trap special. This move plants a trap at different locations based on the button used, which will detonate once an opponent crosses into its detonation area. Combined with her teleport, it's a nasty setup, especially on incoming. Her damage is also really good, helped by her very solid level 1 hyper combo Phoenix Rage. So yeah, very good character, but does that make up for how little health she has? Well, the thing is, Phoenix's utter lack of durability is not meant to make up for her mix-ups, or her zoning, or her air dashes, or anything, because these aren't what make Phoenix so dangerous. It's true that in most situations, once Phoenix dies, something she does very easily, her game is over, but if her health is emptied while her team has 5 bars, then the party really starts. Upon dying with 5 bars, Phoenix activates a unique level 5 hyper combo called Dark Phoenix Rising, which refills her health completely and permanently transforms her into the aforementioned Dark Phoenix, the strongest character in the game. This transformation is so utterly busted that it totally justifies Phoenix's paper-thin defenses. Let's run down the list. First of all, the activation itself creates a shockwave that knocks the opponent away, often giving her a good amount of space to prepare her game. It's even possible to combo off of this shockwave with the right timing, which is just not fair. Dark Phoenix gets a damage boost of 20% as well as a boost to the meter she builds. Worth mentioning is that this meter build is pretty goddamn ridiculous in of itself, which is good as you end up spending all your bars to transform in the first place. In addition, her attacks all receive numerous changes. Her normals fire out feathers, which travel in different patterns based on the normal used. These feathers cause the opponent to go into hit stun, which makes them very proficient at interrupting other characters and adding to the damage of her buttons. Her fireballs become bigger and she now fires out 2 at a time, and the TK traps also grow larger. TK trap mix-ups in Dark Phoenix mode are bonkers because the medium and the heavy versions gain a buff that causes them to wall bounce, meaning these borderline unseeable mix-ups now lead to a full combo, forcing extremely difficult guesses to avoid losing a character. What truly makes Dark Phoenix so insane is the existence of Marvel 3's comeback mechanic, X Factor. X Factor when active grants a damage and speed increase that gets stronger the less characters you have on your team. Dark Phoenix, by design, is meant to exploit this, as the X Factor damage boost stacks with her inherent damage increase, which makes everyone explode when she touches them. Dark Phoenix is capable of shredding teams, making comebacks with little effort and completely overturning any potential life deficits. You can never count a Phoenix team out when they have this literal nuclear bomb in their pockets. Phoenix team building tends to focus on taking advantage of the Dark Phoenix transformation. She's usually never seen outside of the anchor position as the last character on the team, and her other partners are used to build as much meter as possible and play the match without using it so that, if and when Phoenix is brought out, she has the meter necessary to pop her transformation and mount a comeback. Characters with long combos or TAC infinites such as Dr. Doom and Magneto are perfect partners for her in that regard. My favorite Phoenix team is probably Ryan LV's. He plays Chun-Li, a character that was once considered not great, and uses her mobility and air specials to play as lame as possible and stall in the air. His second character, Morrigan, has an assist that builds meter when summoned, and when combined with combos and any hits he might take, his team builds tons of bar that he's not afraid to use with his other characters because he knows he'll build it all back. Dark Phoenix is no doubt a monstrous force and can completely change the momentum of a match, but she's not infallible. Far from it. First off, the nature of most Dark Phoenix team builds can lead to rather top-heavy teams. Not that your other characters are rendered totally useless, but you're not really going to have the chance to spend a ton of meter with them if you're trying to conserve all of your bar for Dark Phoenix. Also, Phoenix's assist potential is rather limited, not because her assists are bad by any means, but because she's in danger of taking stray hits and dying before you can even use her, and Dark Phoenix won't activate if this happens, even with 5 bars. It's often safer to not bring her out at all, which means you're effectively giving up an assist. Dark Phoenix herself, despite her terrifying offense, is still just as fragile. Her health does not go up, and throughout the course of a game it actually drains, although she does have a super called Healing Field that can restore this red health, which is a good countermeasure for this problem. Finally, over the course of a game, there's been anti-Dark Phoenix tech developed to hedge against Phoenix teams. The most simple is to use snapbacks, a move that forcefully switches in another character on the player's team. Commonly, you'll see people get a hit, and then snap in Phoenix during the combo. This is real effective because you can force Phoenix to block an incoming mix-up and take her out if successful, rendering her team crippled if obtaining Dark Phoenix is the main goal. It's also possible to kill her with a move that removes meter, which will prevent her from transforming even if she has 5 bars. This can be done universally with side team aerial combos, although there are some more character-specific moves that also can achieve this effect, like Morrigan's Soul Drain Fireball. If Dark Phoenix does come out, there's setups that can either force her to block a mix-up as soon as she's out, or just straight up kill her with an unblockable, usually a throw super. These are highly conducive to how and when Dark Phoenix comes out due to the shockwave that she fires after transforming. However, before the shockwave comes out, there's a fairly lengthy super flash, and during this period is when you want to perform your setups. If you miss your chance, well, all you can really do is keep your wits about you and lock in. Phoenix is, from what I've seen, not a popular character in this game due to her ability to utterly rob victories away from players. Watch I Heart Justice's video Why We Hate Phoenix for a top player's perspective on that. Is it lame? Maybe, but I think it's indicative of how cool the team building aspect of this game is. There are literally teams built around exploiting just one super because of how powerful it is, and I think that's pretty cool. DNF Duel. What a game. Much of the time I personally spent with this game was the launch version before any patches, and more than anything, I have vivid memories of 2 aspects of this game. The first was how fun Dragon Knight was. Still love this character. The second was the sheer terror of launch Swiftmaster. I'll admit, I didn't play this game a ton, but good lord do I remember this character's sheer dominance over the meta. DNF is a game that's fairly overt about its broken nature. The day that aiding ever shows any restraint in its game design is the day the Earth stops spinning. Can't wait for net impact. However, much like when I talked about the character Launcher, this is more of a retrospective than anything, as Swiftmaster was the recipient of numerous changes and nerfs over the course of the game's lifespan. In saying that, the character's general game plan isn't that much different even after the nerfs. As the name suggests, Swiftmaster is swift. He's got fast walk and dash speed, and his awakenings, which are comeback mechanics that buff characters once a certain amount of health is reached, increase his speed even more. Considering DNF is a fairly slow-paced game, it's really not exaggeration to say he runs circles around much of the cast. You'd think his game plan would be focused on working his way in, but he actually has excellent mid-range and even long-ranged presence. Swift's buttons have fantastic range, with his 5B in particular having incredible reach. This gives him excellent whiff punishing potential and the ability to pressure from far distances. Swift has a versatile set of special moves and MP skills that allows him to do almost anything. By holding S, he can charge up an extremely long-ranged wind punch, which is a bit slow but also knocks down, allowing him to set up Oki afterward or extend combos. His 2S is a wind upper that he can cancel into MP skills for overhead mix. He has a solid projectile with 6S, and 5S aids in his combos. His 4S is a strong, albeit risky, pressure reset that pulls the opponent towards him, which he can follow up with a throw or a fast normal. His MP skills are highly character defining. 4MP, the Wind Belt. Good god, this move cost me so many headaches. It's extremely expensive, coming at the cost of 70 meter. In return, Swift surrounds himself with 3 tornadoes, and not only do they nullify projectiles, but they allow him to play an even stronger neutral game as they can punish basically anything the opponent attempts to do, hitting the brakes on any attempt at pressuring Swift. Swiftmaster can roll into the opponent while the tornadoes are in play to get in quick without using any buttons. Basically, anything the opponent does can be checked when this is up, and it makes contesting his pressure and neutral borderline impossible. 6 MP is his defining MP skill, and the one you typically see his meter being used for. It sends out a wind orb that draws the opponent in. This move is useful for numerous aspects of Swiftmaster's offense. It can be used to make his strings even harder to contest, it's an integral part of his combos since it allows for loops with some of his specials, it's a mix-up tool as it enables Swift to be able to perform a quick air dash that has a hitbox and also behaves like a fast fall, and you can spend extra meter to turn it into a tornado that locks the opponent in block stun for about 3 lunar phases. Swift is all about leveraging his speed, his buttons, and his various ways of locking the opponent down to initiate an onslaught of guard gauge crushing pressure and mix. His offense is versatile with tools for whiff punishing, navigating neutral, defense since he has an invincible DP, and much more. All of this is balanced out by, of course, low health. Swift is not exactly durable, and he also gets guard crushed easily. While DNF is a high damage game with many characters having TOD potential, this is especially evident on Swiftmaster. His damage, while not bad, also tends to be lower than average on many of his starters. I guess he would qualify as a pixie style character, but the funny thing is that there was a point where this couldn't have been any farther from the truth. In a time before any patches, what made Swiftmaster so broken was his damage output. Harshly contrasting the current state of things, Swiftmaster's output in vanilla basically let him 3 or even sometimes 2 touch the entire cast without even needing super. Oppressive neutral and offense is one thing, but when it leads to such insane reward on hit, that's just ridiculous. Guard damage is also something he had on lock, with completely airtight extended block strings that led to guaranteed guard breaks. One of the main reasons he could do all of this nonsense was because of his meter regeneration. So many of his routes would allow him to build back the meter he spent on wind orbs and the wind belt, which is the reason he could so efficiently loop his pressure. Not only were his routes even stronger, but the wind belt lasted almost twice as long as it does currently, meaning his neutral was even more oppressive. Swiftmaster would pressure you from almost any point on screen with impunity, he could make your life bar scream with a single touch, he was just flat out dangerous and immediately stood out as the best character in the game. Goichi, who was a top player in many different games and saw particular success in DNF as he won the ARC World Tour Finals in 2023, put out a tier list about 2 weeks after the game released where he placed Swiftmaster in SSS tier. I mean, when was the last time you even saw a game in the past 5 years with a tier list that went above S, let alone to accommodate a single character? Even if that was very early in the game's lifespan, the results made it hard to refute. Shortly after, in August 2022, a patch was released and it was almost entirely dedicated to nerfing Swift, with his damage and MP regeneration during combos all taking notable hits. Since then, various patches have buffed and nerfed him, resulting in some tier shifts. In some versions he was still very strong, and in others he was very weak. In spite of this, post-patch Swift still saw relative success with the aforementioned Goichi ARC World Tour victory where he used Swiftmaster, and Bluelinkys winning CEO 2023 with the character, both of which happened after the initial nerfs. In the face of this fluctuating viability, I'd honestly say he's got it good since at the end of the day, Swiftmaster was still strong for most of the game's versions. But damn, I don't think anyone who played this game from release up until the August patch will ever forget how strong this character was and how he rampaged through the meta. And there we have it. A few glass cannons, pixies, auto-life characters, health-sacrificing characters. Needless to say, low health isn't exactly a problem when you're just really strong, or really fast, or both. This was a really fun video to make and I really enjoyed talking about some of these characters. They all have some different form of health or defensive inhibitor, but it's fun to see how far developers will go to compensate for this, and evidently struggle to find a balance. Let me know what your example of an overpowered low health character is. Thank you for watching, have a great night, and take care. Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed that video. Sorry for the very long wait, but it's been a bit of a busy week for me, and this video itself took a bit because I did end up having to wait some time for help from some people, but I think it turned out pretty decent in the end. Thank you for watching, and now it's time for me to thank my amazing, lovely channel members. So thank you to Old Man Han, Cammy the Killer, Jazba, Mortis, Arg Seals, Wormy, Terry Hints, Perfect Orange, Pet Shop from Fortnite, Happy the Hap Hap, HPHK, Gundog92, Isaac the Collector, Gerald Say, Sonic Frontiers is a good game, Loop Zoopler, Loose, and Kira the Stowaway. Thank you all so much for the support. It means a lot to me. Like I said, it's been fairly busy. I also ended up hosting that Heritage for the Future tournament, so yeah, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thank you again to Bluelinkys and TONG for the help in footage and information in this video. That's all I have to say. Thank you, I love you all, see ya!